and then I'll come in.
Yep.
And good evening. It is a Manx Labour Party Facebook page special, and tonight we're joined by Lamara up in Ramsey. Good evening, Lamara.
Good evening.
And Fenella. I think you're out east in Wildesonken, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming along. We had a few technical difficulties to kick off with, but hang in there. We might lag, but we won't be lagging behind. Just tweak up the internet. We'll have a bit of a chat, a bit of a discussion, and we'll keep it going as long as we can. Now, if you are watching, please comment, add some questions, give us a like, share, subscribe, and all that stuff. But we're going to talk, I think we'll start with women in Manx politics. Now, I did a bit of research today, and I was scratching my head somewhat, because it's plain and obvious that Mr. Howard Quayle, he doesn't want women in Manx politics. Look at who's making the big decisions in the Council of Ministers. We did have Kate Beecroft, but I think she got, ejected. But we haven't got any female inclusion on the top landing. So, Lamara, just tell us, what's your view about that? What effect do you think that has had on politics on the Isle of Man?
Well, I mean, it definitely sets a really poor precedent for people wanting to get into politics, females wanting to get into politics. I think generally it's been quite a poor show on the island anyway, with women wanting to get into politics and being voted in. I think that is on the verge of changing. We've had a number of females being voted in. We've got Kate Logan and more recently Claire Christian, who did really well in the by-election. And I think it's really important to set an example and make sure that there are plenty of people out there in the cabinet, so that it seems achievable for a lot of women to go into politics and be elected and then be able to be part of the decision process.
Fenella, you're nodding your head here. It looks like there's been an exclusion zone in the decision-making process completely. We had the election for the Tynwald and what have you, and we've had an influx of women, but it doesn't appear to be in the key decisions. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it seems to be. This year's the most females. Well, the last election, 2016, showed the most females in Tynwald. And it's not really good if you have, women represent half the population, and if they're not in Tynwald at the higher levels, then does it feel like half the population isn't being fully represented? And that's a problem, really.
It's certainly evident, and I'm absolutely astonished that this hasn't been addressed. And there's no doubt about it, there's been some cataclysmic errors of judgment in those echelons in the last 6 months. I mean, Lamara, could you have seen things panned out a little differently with COVID and these series of errors that have been made?
It does beg the question, how much was Dr. Hewitt actually listened to in the decision-making process? She seems like a woman who is, is an expert, has a great handle on, the technicalities of epidemiology and things like that. But it seems that despite her being able to really back up all of the decisions that she might have made behind the scenes, I'm not sure if that actually happened. So are women actually listened to, that are in a position of power, or times, are they just put there to seem like things are being taken seriously, but actually the decisions aren't finally made by women in any position of power, let alone politics or or other departments in the government.
Well, incredibly, we had this situation with Dr. Rachel Glover, didn't we? Where
Yeah.
the scientist, the robot expert, was virtually in the dock. It's almost, that's the way it came across. But we're still waiting for a government response, on that. That was promised forthwith. And Fenella, have you been following that? Do you think that there is an air of gender envy, maybe, or is there something going on where they're feeling intellectually inadequate? Maybe, I don't know. What's happening?
Unfortunately, I haven't followed the Rachel Glover closely. Yes, quite possibly.
But it's certainly been another element where there's been some conflict again, and the rhetoric, involved in the press conferences where Dr. Glover, who is an eminent scientist, has been, I don't know, her opinions have been pushed to one side. I don't know. Maybe the truth will come out. We'll wait and see. But anyway, Fenella, we'll just have a chat about what's happening in your neighbourhood, shall we say. We've got an election coming up in, is it July? How's the campaigning going?
So far, because of this most recent lockdown, I haven't been able to do much. But hoping to get out there as soon as we're allowed out, which I think is next week. So hopefully get to go door knocking at that point. One of my main points I really want to bring is recycling, curbside recycling, because we still don't have that in Onken, which feels like we're really sort of lagging behind quite a lot of the other parts of the island. And considering we're such a big parish, it does seem a bit of a shame to still have to be carting all your recycling in your car and taking it off to the bring banks. So that's one of my main issues that I really want to be pushing and see how, because I think there's probably a lot of support in Onken for that, really. Bring banks are incredibly full, and people are a bit short on time. So to ask them to also not only spend time sorting out their rubbish in their kitchen, which does take longer than putting it in a bin, but to then actually bring it to banks. We're trying to make these things as easy as possible. And I think one of the easiest things we can do is curbside recycling.
We don't seem to be taking this seriously, do we? It's almost like the responsibility of the householder, isn't it, to take the environmental, direction. I mean, certainly where I am down in Port Erin, it'd be quite easy just to chuck it in the bin and forget about it. But you've got to make a conscious effort. I'm seeing up in Ramsey, is it a similar thing for your household waste, your recyclables?
Yeah, it's pretty horrendous, really, because I mean, especially at the moment with lockdown, the recycling bins have been overflowing, and people have already gone to the effort to, get their recycling, to organise it, and then to pack it in the car and bring it down, or whether they bring it down by, I used to bring mine by bicycle, and then they find that the bins are full. I'm sure that there's logistical issues, but they need to be fixed, and they should. I mean, we've had 3 lockdowns now. We've known that it was an issue, and obviously with the amenity sites being closed, they knew that the demand was going to be high. People are staying in, people are drinking and eating in more than they are out in restaurants and things like that. So they know the fact that waste and recycling is going to increase. So it's bizarre that it wasn't foreseen. But I mean, it's just madness that in this day and age, you're still expected to do it all yourself, and there isn't the service provided there for us.
It's true, and I'm not really quite sure what Onken's stance is, how many bring banks there are, or how easy it is, but it seems to be an island-wide problem. Is that right, Fenella?
Yeah, they seem to be quite widely, there's only a few of them around, so obviously depending on how close you live to them is how lucky you are with having them. I don't know all the exact points. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 points in Onken, but it could be as low as 3, actually. I just need to check that.
But it is bonkers that we've got parishes and villages and towns that live alongside each other, and they choose different ways to deal with the rubbish. So it's down to that particular group of commissioners. So, Fenella, would you be looking at having a national effort eventually to deal with recycling?
Well, I think if that's the most cheapest way of dealing with it, I think it's probably the best answer, really. If we can all be brought into a central location and then distributed out from the island from there. And if it's cheaper for us to get rid of our waste, of course, our rates will be a bit lower, which is always... So it probably would be the best way going forward, or at least split the island up into the different areas and then have an overall one on top of that.
Well,
yeah.
I know we're talking rubbish at the moment, but should say our supermarkets, ShopRite, for instance, which is a local company, is this something they could do about improving their packaging? Because at the moment, I look in the bin and I'm just seeing a load of plastic. Lamara, you've got a big ShopRite up there, haven't you?
Yeah, and we've got big co-ops as well.
So could we look at some other ways?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've thought of times of my shopping, in the queue, ripping off all the plastic packaging and saying, there you go, I didn't need half of that. There's things that are packaged that don't even need to be packaged. They have their own skin or their own container, and yet they're wrapped up in plastic so that it's more appealing to the eye. I'm of the opposite view. I think it looks worse. I think it looks unappetizing. But how do we change that? I think there's so many things, particularly in environmental matters, that there's kind of like a top down, a bottom up pressure, and then there's a top down pressure. Now, the government is the top down pressure, telling people what they should be doing, and a lot of people might be quite reluctant, quite even rebellious, and not want to be told. And then there's the people that out there like me and Fenella who want to do our recycling and want to improve, and we're trying to get the government to we're making the changes, and then we're trying to get the government to put in changes too. And then there's the people in the middle. There's the people in the middle that just want to get on with their lives, and they don't want to have to deal with the hassle, and they just want to feed their kids and go to school and go to work and not think about all this kind of stuff. And this is where it's so important that actually the government steps in and says, right, okay, this is what's best to do, and this is how best to do it, and this is what we're going to do from now on. And I lived in Australia for a little while, and that's what they did. They just said, right, this is how it's going to be, this is how you're going to deal with your rubbish, and everyone just had to do it. And it was taken out of the hands of just the few making the effort to everyone just getting on board. This is how we deal with stuff nowadays. And I think sometimes that decision has to be made. It's like if you look at the social distancing and the mask wearing, when we knew there were cases on the island, we knew that they were out in the community, even though they were in the cluster. Yes, in the community, they were in Java Express. That is the community. But people didn't want to start social distancing. People didn't want to start wearing masks because they weren't told, because nobody said, oh, yeah, you should be doing that now. And then I heard a lot of people complaining, sorry to just totally go off on a total tangent, but I heard a lot of people complaining, saying, well, it's not down to the government to tell people. People should be able to make decisions themselves, and, it's our fault too. But, yeah, it doesn't like that. It just doesn't. People want to be told because they don't want to be the first one to do it. They don't want to be the ones that's like, oh God, look at them social distancing and wearing a mask. Don't they look ridiculous? And that's how it was. And that's how it was until they said, right, now you've got to social distance. Now you've got to wear a mask. And all of a sudden, next day, boom, everyone went out and did it. That's just...
Yes, that's very true. They could take a similar idea on about, food packaging on islands, the things they do have control of. Obviously, there's no control of what comes in on the boat and the packaging, which is that's contained in. But if we did brought in some other types of laws, then yeah, once you kind of put it in the stone, people adapt, don't they? They change and they do it. So
Do you think
yeah,
we should be starting at school,
right, I think
school and have it right, from the beginning, that it's almost like the duty of every citizen to do their bit? Because I'm not even sensing that. I'm not even sensing any of our MHKs talking about it. Fenella? Would you think that the our political masters should be saying more about this? Should they be shouting from the rooftops? Because we've had the Green Initiative and it's not seemed to, I don't know, strike home too greatly.
Yeah, sorry, I think the signal's cutting out there a little bit. Yeah, it's supposed to be in a climate emergency, and nice if they were showing a bit more drive with that. I mean, I know the COVID situation does seem to have felt like it's derailed a little bit, but now that we're coming out of that, I really hope they get back on track and really start pushing these issues and thinking about the future of the island and how we're going to combat the issues that we are will be legally required to achieve. So.
I think,
going back to ShopRite and the little bits and bobs, I think they could do. If they have their own, like they do their own soft straws and that sort of stuff, if they could try and not use plastic packaging, that would be great. It also possibly would be that I personally don't really like to buy that stuff because I know it's just the extra packaging, whereas if it was in compostable packaging, that would be much better. And simple things as well, like also possibly if they could have the Alman creameries recycling bins for their milk bottles. So when you go pick up your new milk, you can drop off your old ones. I think that would also be good because any sort of convenience which makes these sorts of things easier is the best way to go forward, I think.
Indeed. So we'll just move on a bit about getting to and from the recycling bank and what have you. How should we move around? What should we be doing? Should we be on a skateboard, the bicycle? Fenella, come on, you must have a view on that. You're almost a city slicker. You're in the Douglas conurbation, are you?
Yeah, the problem with Onken is there's so many hills, so it's not great for just walking around. But no, I think a massive mix of these things is the real way forward. I think electric bicycles are fantastic. Recently got one of them. They're a lot of fun. Best way to get around, I think, especially if you're in the Douglas area and the Onken area. I think free public transport could be a way forward to try and get people to get out of their cars and use the buses. I think it'd be a great incentive if you didn't have to pay for petrol and parking and you could just jump on a bus and you knew it was going to be free for you. And if you've got children with you as well, it actually makes it financially viable, whereas at the moment it's not financially viable to get the bus if you have children. Well, more than one children anyway. And it can end up being quite expensive if you want to go out of Douglas and go further afield. I think electric cars as well. We need the renewable energy. Really, it's no good us all moving to electric cars and then sticking with burning natural gas, because that's not going to decrease our carbon emissions. If anything, it actually might increase them.
Tell me, up in Ramsey, everyone just flies over the mountain, don't they? It's like thousands of cars going into Douglas. What's all that about? Could they really seriously jump on a bus? It's free now.
Look, I used to take the bus. I used to commute by the bus, and it was good fun. But yeah, pretty much, you get to the point where it becomes an inconvenience, and the fact that you kind of sat on it with just a queue full of cars behind you feels a little bit pointless because you're just holding up the traffic. I mean, the fact that there's only a couple in the morning and then every other car gets stuck behind the bus on the mountain, you feel like you're doing your bit, but then you're just holding everybody up as well. And most people just want to drive. I've had dreams of having a commuter tram/train to Douglas, and the thought of jumping on a train, being able to read my book, get there in 15 minutes would be fantastic. But I mean, I'm probably living in a dreamland there because no one's going to spend the money on that. But I think if we move to electric cars and hopefully electric buses at one point, then that would be ideal. And the more people that to get the bus because of financial incentives, i.e. it's free and parking is difficult and not as available or expensive in the capital and in other towns, then I think it's going to encourage people to get the bus. And so, yeah, it's important trying to shift that culture away from the car, but on the island, it's just so much easier to get in a car and go where you want. And it's a pity as well because they seem to only want to reduce the services that are available, like the dial a ride now. You can't get the bus like you used to some of the towns and villages up north. You have to dial it. And what if you just decide in the morning, oh, hey, it's really nice, I want to go out for a walk out Jirby Beach or whatever. There's no chance because you've got to book it a day in advance. So you should have booked it yesterday, and then you book it for tomorrow, and it's booking it down.
That's bonkers, isn't it? That's bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, I thought there might be some benefits to it, but I think on the grand scheme, it's just cutting them off even more.
So, Fenella, I think we might have had a discussion with the Manx Labour Party about the cost of a free bus service per day, and I think it could be in the region of about 8,000 quid on lost fares. I think it is. I think we had a bit of a chat, and I've seen that pop up somewhere. So we're not talking about a huge amount of money when you can examine the benefits, aren't you? You're talking about it is multi-millions a year, but when you think about what we squander money on anyway, government-wise, where would it be? What would be, I don't know, the point where you think, right, let's just do free public transport?
No, I think we should definitely trial it. I mean, especially for subsidising the buses, why not go that bit further and see what difference it makes, what effect it makes on people. It can also be really helpful for people's incomes. If you're on the lower end of the income spectrum, especially if you're below the tax bracket, you haven't seen any sort of breaks to your income for years. So having something like free public transport could actually be incredibly helpful for a large section of the population.
Absolutely. It's going to help people work, isn't it, if it's efficient?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. We can't do this and then cut back services because it's no good if it's not available and it's not ready to be used. Then people aren't going to use it. They need to make these things as easy as possible, really. But yeah, like you said, when it breaks down what it actually is, 6 million extra a year or something like that? I mean, it's not that much in the grand scheme of things.
No,
£1 million.
No, and we could be making the roads a lot safer because there'd be less volume on the road, so then it'd be more appealing to cycle, and there'd be less carnage on the road. So let's just park that to one side on the traffic, and let's have a chat about windmills and wind farms and tidal projects. Lamara, I mean, like, there's nothing, is there, on the island? It sounds like you've travelled far and wide. Is that right? You must have seen wind farms in operation on your travels. Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, no problems.
I think she's... Hello, shall we wave? Lamara? Well, we'll wait for Lamara just to book back on. I think she's just having a bit of a look at things, busy at the desk. So we'll just jump back onto the election campaign, because we've got yourself, Fenella, but we've actually got Sarah in Douglas and Joni fighting seats in Douglas, haven't we? Which is really exciting for the general election in September.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to be involved in the Manx Labour Party, isn't it? Because there is a lot going on campaign-wise.
Yeah, definitely exciting times. So yeah, a lot of activity. So, and of course, with both Sarah and Joni, it'd be good to see some more women in politics as well. Bring it back around onto that. So,
and of course, we represented in Douglas Town Council, so we've got a bit of experience in electioneering and campaigning, and there's a good team. So. Oh, you're back with us, Lamara. Hello, Lamara.
No, maybe.
Let's see. I tell you what, let's just send Lamara a message and see what she's doing. But she's certainly on screen. I can hear you. You can hear me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Right, let's have a look. We've got a couple of observations in on the messages about electric cars. The issue with electric cars, it doesn't cut the emissions enough, and it still causes the same congestion issues. And the MLP is committed to trialling free public transport with the aim of expanding the whole service in the future. More on this to come with our policy document that's going to be published soon. So that's exciting. So tell me, Fenella, are you going to be doing all the doorsteps? Is that going to be your plan?
Yeah, hopefully all 4,000 of them, I think it is. Well, that's how many houses there are. But yeah, it's quite a lot to get around. Donkin's pretty big, really. So I'm going to try my best to get around everyone. Yeah, hopefully, even if I don't get to talk to everyone, at least a leaflet through their door anyway. So that's the plan. Find what people are concerned about.
And we've got Lamara just coming back in. She's dropped out. This is the good thing in. Bring her in and add right. Here we go. Hello, are you back?
I'm back.
What happened? You disappeared.
Can we maybe talk about the internet on the Isle of Man?
Yes, well, in the world standings, the world rankings, I think we're nudging around Moldavia when our Channel Island friends down in Jersey have got the second fastest internet in the world. Can you believe that? How can we miss out? How can we be so bad? Absolutely.
Yeah, we should be aiming for that, really.
Absolutely.
It's absolute madness.
It is, and we're supposed to be attracting people to the island, but I think it will happen. There's 10 million quid being put aside, hasn't it, for fibre and what have you. But if you get a chance, have a look. You can put your postcode in now and find out when you're going to get rewired.
Fibre.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I looked today, actually, funnily enough, and it says sometime between July 2021 and July 2022. I was like, oh, yay.
Oh, God. What about 5G? I mean, I heard a lot about that not too long ago. Is that happening or what? Because that'll circumvent fibre, won't it?
Well, funnily enough, I've actually just had to use my 4G to link up to my laptop to be able to rejoin this conversation. So I'm not even using the broadband at the minute. I don't know what happened with 5G. It seemed like it was going ahead. There was an awful lot of fuss about it. I think the kind of paranoid conspiracy theorists got way up in arms about it. Misinformation spread like wildfire. I mean, it's worse than Ramsey rumours, honest to God. It's just horrendous.
Did you have the tinfoil hat at the ready, Fenella, for the 5G mast? Do you trust it? Is it a bit like the vaccine? We're just supposed to trust it? Is that it?
I think it's good to question things, but I think 5G is okay. Yeah, I can't imagine those electric waves are going to be doing that many problems to people. But, did they put one up in Governor's Hill, didn't they? What happened with that? Because you can see it on the road as you drive through.
Oh, I don't
know if it's set up anymore.
I don't know. I'll have to visit there with my phone and see if a 5 pops up. Right, we were just having a bit of a chat there whilst you went off into cyberspace, Lamara.
Yep.
We were talking about, remember, we've got Joni Farragher and we've got Sarah Maltby contesting for elections in Douglas in September for the House of Keys, which adds another dimension. And we've had an influx. We've had Claire Christian, Claire Barber, who seem quite energetic, don't they? And we've got Daphne. So there has been more of a voice that's been loud and it's been heard, and I think they're quite savvy, aren't they? I think they've come to the end of the term nearly, and there's certainly going to be more of a presence, isn't there, in the House of Keys? There has to be more candidates coming forward, and who knows? We could get more of a balance, and maybe even a future chief minister who is female. How about that?
Yeah, fantastic. That'd be great. Yeah.
So
the numbers are increasing each.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the last one we had 11 females were running out of 63. And the one before was 5 out of 64. So, they've increased. I think before that it was kind of fairly stable. But so we'll see how many come through this year.
I just think in preparation for our little broadcast tonight, I thought I could just find a photograph of the Council of Ministers as they are. And it's really difficult, so it's whether they've sucked them all off the internet, because it's just it is a group of blokes. And remember, when we had, I think it was 5 female MLCs coming, remember that? Don't rock the boat. Remember that? Don't rock the boat, they were told. But they have been rocking the boat, so that is good. Now, we've got, I'll ask Lamara, we've got some green representation, strong representation. We've got climate legislation coming into the House of Keys and through Tynwald. Who's kind of, who are the people to watch?
It's tough for me to say, really, because at the moment we are waiting for people to put the name forward, and the people that have put the name forward at the moment aren't female. We do have obviously a couple of people on the committee like myself who are female, and one of which who has been in and out of the committee for some time and has been helping us out is Sarah Mercer, who is on the panel at the moment that we hoped it was going to be like a citizens' assembly, and they were going to look at the best things to do for any green change on the island. I've forgotten the precise name of it right now, but it's
A forum.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
that's
forum, that's it, rather than a citizens' assembly, exactly, yeah. And Sarah's been doing a really good job in that. She recently actually put out, I think it was an interview with Jeff the Mongoose, quite possibly, and she was asking people to come forward with their ideas so that she could kind of represent them in this forum. So that's a really good thing. I would like to kind of take it back a little bit on this conversation and just talk about kind of my own experience in life and in politics. So obviously I'm not running as a candidate at the moment, and so I'm not an elected official, but I've always been very politically active, very politically interested, and very opinionated. And the kind of response that I get and the backlash I get, I think, is often attributed to the fact that I'm female. A lot of people don't like women being particularly opinionated and being noisy and loud and just brash. It seems that most quite like people to just get on with it and be quiet and put up and shut up and dare I say it, go back to the kitchen. And I've had many an anti-fan over the years, and one will go away and then another one will pop up, and I just wonder whether I would have the same kind of backlash and response if I wasn't female, and somehow I doubt that.
Fenella, go on, you're nodding your head.
Oh, sorry, it's just saying in the same sort of way, though, that you get the kickback. It's that sort of, yeah. I think it's definitely not just you. I think there's definitely other people are experiencing it. I think Sarah's had some problems. Sarah Maltby's have had some particularly nasty people coming at her and things like that, and you probably wonder, is that because you're a woman that's putting your head above the parapet and being shot at back a bit more? But I feel like they don't think that you think through things as well either, which is there's an automatic assumption that you possibly are a bit more stupid than you are, which isn't great. Not a nice thing to have to consider.
Do you think on the Isle of Man it's different? Maybe we're still 5 years back.
5? Bit more than that, maybe.
Because in some ways we have been quite progressive, giving women the vote early on, and we could own land in our own right from a very early point, I think from the early 1700s. So, I mean, there is elements of it in Manx society which women have had quite prominent positions, but I don't know when it comes to just a general culture of talking online and stating your case how far behind we are. I don't know how bad it is in other countries, but I think it's quite bad across the country, isn't it?
I think this year is absolutely critical then, isn't it, in who we elect, who puts the name forward, who's got the confidence to get involved and make changes. I think 2021 is going to be a huge year for the Isle of Man, and it's up to everyone that, who is perhaps upset and complaining and they've had time to think. I mean, surely, Lamara, you've probably sensed it, you've had conversations with people, that this break, with COVID, it gives time for people to reevaluate, doesn't it?
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. I think there's a very strange culture on the Isle of Man with politics, and I've noticed it a lot during lockdown. That if you have an opinion about politics or politicians, if you criticise the government, then you should automatically put yourself up for election tomorrow. And it seems that if you want an opinion, then that is it. You could either do a job better, or you should put yourself forward to, take the flak. And I think possibly it scares people off actually wanting to participate in politics. And also, there's a lot of anti-politician rhetoric that gets pushed around. That all politicians are untrustworthy and they're on a gravy train, and there's a lot of this on the island, and it's a real shame, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there that really care, and I think they might want to try and work for their community if they didn't receive that kind of backlash. But it's strange, because then if you criticise the government in general, look out. Because I think particularly as well but the politicians, because particularly during lockdown, they've become household names. Ashy and HQ, and I think that people form attachment and a healthy respect, of course, because they are doing an incredible job, and I'm sure it's stressful and frustrating, but I think that people really don't want to criticise somebody that becomes a household name, and they don't like to point out where they may have gone wrong. And I found a lot at the start of lockdown, nobody wanted to talk about the fact that COVID had been in the community for 3 weeks before anything was done about it, and even one of the politicians turned around and said, now's not the time to talk about it. Well, when is?
Yeah.
4 people have died now. Is it still not the time to talk about it? No, of course it isn't. When then? Where's the accountability? There is none, because either people, want to say that the government's doing a great job and they've done amazing with everything that they've done, or it's disrespectful to start criticising right now, because for what reason, I don't know. It seems that, there's a very strange culture sometimes when it comes to politics.
Well,
what's your opinion,
with politics, Fenella? How important is party politics? What does that mean to you?
Oh, I think it's always good to have a nice group of people that you can bounce ideas off. It's nice to have support and know that you're not just sort of throwing ideas out into the wind, and that they have genuine sort of backing, good soundboard and that sort of stuff. And I think I think when you put yourself forward with something that's so stressful, like you said, you're putting yourself out in potential firing lines for stuff, I think it's very good to have people behind you to help support you and keep you on track and that sort of thing. And then they can also bring into points across like you that might not have thought about by yourself, and that's really beneficial as well in different areas and ways to look at things. And also someone to hold you accountable, I guess, so that like some of these politicians, when they go off and do stuff, there's no one to tell them that maybe that wasn't the best way to do stuff. Whereas there's a party behind you, they can tell you, we're not happy with what you've done, and you need to do things a bit differently. So I think they are important. I think we talk about people being independents, but most of the time they are conservative as such. They just haven't got the group necessarily around the way. So party politics, I think they're a good way forward. The Greens seem to be doing some interesting stuff as well. So, and again, it's good to have that sort of community, isn't it?
It's good to have the guiding principles, and that the voter will know what they're going to get. I think with the payroll ministerial options at the moment, department members, get an extra bit of wedge, then they're going to be part of the block vote rather than the opposition vote. But Manx politics has been really worth looking at this last month in Tynwald, where there's been an opposition party forming, because we've had some critical national issues. And Lamara, you mentioned before about COVID and about errors and mistakes, that the consequences have been absolutely phenomenal. We're talking super serious, and this continues to be brushed under the carpet. So the business with Dr. Rachel, hopefully we'll get to understand the truth on what happened, but at the moment I think the government's on the back foot. Now, I'll just pull up some comments. We've got a few bits and bobs going on here, so we'll whiz through. We've got Andrew Bentley, who's known to us, and he's talking about the Cozy Nook. Cozy Nook registration, triumph of sentimentalism, missed opportunity or sensible project of the nation's assets. Now, I'm going to just bounce onto Lamara here, because in Ramsey you had I think it's a registered building that was kind of brought to the ground, wasn't it? I think was it an old mill or
yeah.
It was on the Ramsey Promenade. We had this thing about the Cozy Nook, where an appealing building for many. Should we keep them, or should we perhaps have a complete new direction?
So, I mean, obviously, it's got to go by case basis. I mean, it's not something that you could do kind of a whole sweeping clear out of all the dead wood, which, I mean, in some respect would be possibly positive for energy efficiency and things like that. But yeah, I mean, you can't just get rid of culture and heritage in the name of progress and efficiency. So they do have to be picked carefully. However, I think there is a slight tendency on the island to over sentimentalize things, and just to like things because they're old. I mean, just recently there was pictures put up on Ramsey Community Pinboard about the Grand Island, and I used to work at the Grand Island Hotel. It was one of my first jobs after university when I came back to the Isle of Man, and look, it was a great place. Would have been fantastic in its heyday, but it just gone to rack and ruin, and it wasn't worth keeping. It wasn't worth saving. I mean, it was white, it was big, but it wasn't even that nice to look at in my opinion. And I think people get really nostalgic about things like that, and they attach a lot of sentimentality to it, and that's understandable. But we can have pictures for that kind of thing. We can have museums. Keeping these old buildings is not really going to achieve much, especially if it's just going to hemorrhage money all the time because you're just constantly making repairs. And the lovely houses that are put there now, absolutely stunning, and they probably couldn't have done a better job on that site. So with the Cozy Nook, I really liked the layout and the pictures of the new building that they were going to put there. I thought it reminded me of the Sound Cafe, big panoramic windows. I could imagine sitting there, even if it was chucking it down, and having a hot chocolate, watching clouds move across the bay. Now, Cozy Nook, I wouldn't go there unless it was super sunny and I could sit outside. The inside of it just isn't that appealing to me. But a lot of people loved it, and I guess they went with the people that were quite vocal about saving it. Let's hope it doesn't come to bite them in the backside. Interesting.
By the way, my first job was at the Grand Island Hotel behind the bar as well, back in the day. But I think it's a bit of a Marmite job, isn't it? Some people like it, some people hate it. Fenella, I mean, what's your view? I mean, should everything be energy efficient and modern, or is there certain aspects we should be thinking
it's a difficult thing. You have to keep heritage. It's one of the only connections we have to our sort of social culture of the past. To make these buildings more energy efficient, that is also incredibly important. I do think that sometimes is difficult because when developers, obviously they're in to make money, aren't they? So if it's going to cost them a lot more to have to redesign something to incorporate older structures into new, then I can see why it's not appealing for them. In some cases, I do think that possibly they should forego some of their profits to do it. It's still profitable to do it. I think it's very important to work with architects that can work with old buildings and reimagine the sort of how they could be newly used. I think it's difficult with the Cozy Nook. It is a very old building, but it is also very, well, it's getting to the point where it's not really fit for purpose, is it? And if no one also wants to take on the lease because it's not fit for purpose because of things like flooding, being incredibly energy inefficient, and like you said, Lamara, the inside space not being particularly like appealing because it's quite dark with all small windows, and only being able to use it during seasonal, then you could end up with another ruin sat there being empty and not being utilised. So it's definitely a difficult one. I think things have to be taken on as case by case.
Absolutely. I'll just run into the other comments from Alice. Spot on, Lamara. Need some accountability doesn't mean someone is being nasty. Just we shouldn't be different and let things go past without questions. Sam is saying, I have often thought the Isle of Man is a one-party system masquerading as a no-party system. So
I would like to come on to the... You mentioned earlier about whether having a party system it would be good on the island. And I just wanted to say, really how glad I am that I'm part of a party system, and that being taken on by the Green Party things that could happen to me. I felt connected with people that shared my opinion and point of view. I'm often educated by them on a regular basis. I'm in touch with them on a near enough daily basis. We make decisions together. We're democratic even within the party. We make decisions on, voting as members or even on the committee. And really, I think it's just a brilliant way to organise politics. And sometimes I can have quite strong viewpoints. So it's nice to either be cheered on when I'm on the right track, but also re-educated or shown where possibly I'm going off on my own little tangents.
That's a very good point. And Fenella, I think we've seen it on our side, haven't we? Because we've got to kind of know each other over the years, the members of the party, and we have got different viewpoints at time, and that's what makes it a democratic process. That's what we're allowed. It's not North Korea. I'll just come in. We've got Lucy Tompkinson. Welcome, Lucy. I think the opposite. The island has got rid of too many historic buildings. For example, the old prison could have been made into an amazing hotel. I think the Cozy Nook should definitely be preserved too. An amazing character-filled building. So there you have it. I think each case on its own merits. So I think we'll just move into the final section of our chat tonight. And one of the themes we wanted to cover was mental health. So Fenella, can you talk to us about your thoughts about mental health? It's been such a big, sad issue for the island.
Yeah, it's a terrible issue for the island. It has been for a very long time. I think COVID really has helped bring it ahead. Well, hasn't helped bring it ahead for some people, and there's been some horrible tragedies over it. The island has had a problem with this for a long time. This is not a new thing. And it's a question of whether we think that the funding is being allocated properly and if it's being allocated in the right places properly as well. There does seem to be a lot of concern that a lot of the charity sectors are actually picking up a lot of the people which mental health should be dealing with, and they're potentially not getting to where they need to get to. And that's not really the best way forward. I mean, it's great that they're doing this sort of stuff, but we need to see why our services aren't doing what they should be doing and what we can be doing to change that and adjust that. My battery's about to go. I need to grab my charger, which is terrible of me.
Okay. We'll jump over to Lamara. It's such a huge issue, and again, this COVID nightmare that we've had. I'm sure that there's all kinds of problems coming out of the woodwork, and will continue to do so.
I wish I had another couple of hours to talk about this with you, to be honest with you. It's a major one, and I'm going to really struggle to kind of touch on it right now. But yeah, there is a major problem, and there has been a major problem on the island for decades. I think that maybe COVID has brought it to the forefront. People have been suffering for so long. The waiting lists are just horrendous. The waiting time is horrendous. How people are, what kind of response that they receive when they're ringing up the crisis team, or how they're treated in general. It's just shocking. I reached out to some people last November, October, November time, to try and get get people's own experiences on it. I wanted to see, what had they had a good experience, had they had a bad experience, what went on. And I spoke to dozens and dozens of people, and there was just an overriding sense of despair, really. People had gone to the doctor and had been given prescription medication to try and fix the problem, which I guess that it's the first port of call. They just want to medicate people and hope that the issue goes away, but a lot of the time that there's underlying problems, and it's not just biochemical in the brain. A lot of people have suffered trauma. A lot of people have deep-seated issues, from their childhood, and medication is just never going to fix that. And then the waiting list to even be seen by somebody is several years. I know individuals who have, they've literally got to the point where they've ended up trying to take their own life, ended up in the hospital, and then they don't speak to anybody or see anybody for 2.5 years. And they're sitting across from the table talking to me about their experiences, and they said, yeah, I only got my appointment, last month. And yet this happened to me over 2 years ago. And it's really unfortunate. I've had personal losses very recently, and it's going to be difficult for me to talk about that, but it's horrendous. And I do think there is actually, to coin the phrase of the time at the moment, is there's an epidemic on the island, and it is a mental health epidemic, and it spreads like wildfire. And I think that the more death and the more pain and the more trauma that is around people, the worse it's going to get, and it will only spiral. And I know that there's been changes with Manx care, and I'm hoping that this is going to be the start of something positive, but things really need to be shook up desperately, or else we're going to see more people taking their own lives. We're going to see more people on medication and then at crisis point, and it should never get to that. I think that if only people had a simple counselling service, they don't even necessarily need to be seen by psychologists and psychiatrists. They often just probably need to talk about the problems that they have and get that off their chest, find ways of coping with it, and then hopefully be given some tips on how to manage their conditions or their feelings and their trauma going forward. And then, if they need to be seen by specialists at a later time, they could be, and that could potentially alleviate the demand. And I think that, the fact that we're on an island, it makes it difficult to employ people and to bring people over, but there is the potential that you could train people to be counsellors and to give therapy, cognitive behavioural therapy, or just even, like what we have with all of the other charities that are providing counselling services. Why not train people up so that they can be counsellors and at least alleviate the burden somewhat, while people are then waiting to be seen, at a later date by experts higher up the chain.
Blimey. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry to hear that you've obviously suffered. People close to you have been affected by this. I think when you look at the number of victims through poor care with mental health, we look at our rates of suicide. They seem to be higher than, say, the death toll for that from COVID. Okay, I know it's an unfortunate kind of contrast there, but I'm not really hearing people talking about this, and yet in the Isle of Man society, there's a great awareness that we're sadly lacking in our services regarding mental health. And yet again, I'm not hearing politicians really speaking about it seriously or saying this is going to be an election issue. Fenella, I mean, it's not really on the political radar. Is it appealing to voters, this kind of subject? I don't know, because it's completely absent in the rhetoric that we hear on a day-to-day basis from Tynwald and the House of Keys generally.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be spoken about too much in those sorts of areas. The voters, I think, must be concerned about this sort of stuff, because, I mean, if it affects us at this level, it must affect a lot more people over here. We're all very highly interconnected, and the problem with mental health, just like with any sickness, is you never know when it could strike and who it could affect in your family. So it should be something that we should all be very concerned about. I mean, if you broke your arm, you would like to think that something was going to be done about it. You wouldn't be told to go away at the hospital. So it's the same type of situation should be put on mental health. It shouldn't be treated any different. It also seems absolutely insane over here that you have to wait to the point where you're at crisis or past crisis point before you even considered into the service. If you had a horrible cut on your arm, you wouldn't wait until it was incredibly infected before you actually did something about it. You try and treat it initially at the start. The problems with putting antidepressants straight from the doctors is that they're supposed to be short-term interventions. They're supposed to get you out of the worst places. They're not supposed to be lifelong situations that you get put on and you don't get any help beyond that. Definitely more CBT therapy is the way I think we should be going. I don't think you should be put on antidepressants without being put into and offered that sort of therapy. They know that it's much more effective than just drugs. And some of these drugs as well, they're not simple chemicals. They're really strong, like mind-altering stuff. And if people aren't given the support when they're given them, worse things can happen to them. It's not a good situation at all. Potentially the whole health service of the mental health service needs to relook at this and see how we actually handle things differently, because I don't know if they're a bit stuck in the past and they need to move on with their thoughts of how they actually deal with this sort of thing. But people should be concerned about it. Voters should be concerned about it, and MHK should be concerned about it, talking about it more.
The track record is poor, even to the point of how verdicts are recorded in inquests and so forth, and how that is released to the public. It is a real worry, because on top of that, you've got heroin overdoses, and we've got high figures for that. And then we look at COVID, and is this going to accelerate the problems? So there's no doubt about it. The alcohol intake will have gone through the roof, I think, during this time. So have we got a government that is prepared for this? Have we got a government that is going to be, putting a severe amount of money and resources and services into coping with this? Lamara, you're shaking your head. I don't think you've really got much faith that that's going to happen.
No, none at all. I think that there are severe deficit in the amount of care that can be provided with what they have at the moment. I'm sure the facilities that are available are actually quite good standard, but whether you can actually get into them for any help is a different story. And I think that obviously with everything that's happened with COVID and people's lives being totally upended over the last year or so, it's literally going to be the next fallout after we deal with this. And plus, borders are going to open, COVID's going to hit. Will there be enough people vaccinated to provide some kind of herd immunity when it does hit? And we're then going to have to fend for ourselves in some respect. Then how affect our mental health as well. And I think I think the stigma on mental health is starting to be lifted, but it still sticks. It's still often used as an insult, to call someone mental or something like that. And it's been around for, all of my life. I know that as much. Most people, the thought of them going to counselling, going to therapy, it's a taboo thing. It's admitting that there's something wrong with you and that you're not right in the head, which is completely it's completely crazy to use a term. And I think that culture needs to change, and I think it is starting to change, and I think people are talking about it more, and I think that's so important. And I think the more that people do talk about it, the more the government is going to respond, and the more they're going to feel like they actually do need to do something about it. And I think people need to be really vocal and really opinionated, and I think they need to scream out that yes, we do need this. I'm sure that everybody listening to this interview who had depravity or trauma in any way, maybe they're now an alcoholic because they deal with it like that. Maybe they're, because these kind of things are often, drugs and alcohol are often used just to mask all of these problems and the trauma and pain that people are suffering. I really hope that the government is going to pull their finger out and do something, and make sure that it does become a focal point. I wish I had more time to talk about it, but
well, it's been wonderful to hear your side of it. Fenella, would you like to just finish off the issue about mental health?
Yeah, when you were saying about as well with the heroin and the alcohol and that sort of thing, a lot of people are using it as escapisms and crutches to deal with the mental health problems they have. There also seems to be issues a lot with people that are neurodiverse as adults not getting the help that they need, and that can cause a lot of depression and that sort of stuff, and also a lot of misdiagnosis, which is not good. But I'm concerned that this problem will only get worse as we see more inequality on the island. More people feel that they can't achieve to buy houses, that the jobs aren't there for them, and that sort of stuff. I think this situation's only going to get worse and worse. And so it's not just the case of just doing something about it at the point of the health service. It needs to be the other things in the way as well that cause the mental health problems, and looking at them and improving those situations. It shouldn't just be a case of looking at it at the end result. It has to be looking at the root cause of it and what we can do to alleviate that in the first place.
I'm grateful for Manx Labour Party member and former member of Tynwald House of Keys for a long time, David Craine, who is a great proponent about dealing with mental health. And I've put the text on the screen. I'll just read it out though. That 2 reports on mental health and suicide were presented to Tynwald when I chaired the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee last February 2020. The government are supposed to be reporting back to Tynwald on progress. David Ashford was supportive, but we need to ensure that this is improved. And I think what David says a lot, really, that's over a year ago, isn't it? And if David's waiting, we're all waiting. And I think this has got to be a big election issue, and I think anyone that's standing wherever you are should raise it and bring it out to the doorsteps and discuss it. And really, I think the Green Party and the Manx Labour Party will be on the same front on that for sure. I think that's fair enough. So I think we'll just wind it up for the night. Thank you both for coming on board. It's been lovely to chat and really engage, and we're so grateful to those who took part in the comments. I know it's a new thing that we're doing, is doing Facebook Live, and we hope that it can catch on and engage more people, and fundamentally is get the Manx people interested in politics and actually trying to make changes, because this is a big year, isn't it? So good luck, Fenella, with your campaigning in Onken, out east. Mind those streets, it's always dark in Onken. I can't understand it. Do they turn the street lights down up there to save a bit of power?
I don't know. At 1 o'clock, but that's
fairly
regular, isn't it? Outside of Douglas.
It does. I tell you, when you go to Onken, they do seem to put the dimmer switch on. Or maybe the street lights are further apart, but there you go. It's always a bit gloomy, but it's not gloomy up in sunny Ramsey. Lovely weather today, I bet. Beautiful up there. So
Gorgeous.
Good luck with the Green Party and your initiatives, and it's great to have you both on together. And hopefully we'll chat again. So we'll say good night. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Have a great night.